Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I have a friend who's a therapist. And she tells this story that once she was in a session with a client who was having a particularly tough time. He was just telling her story after story after story after story of tzuris. And she was listening deeply, thinking, oh my God, you need a therapist. And then he paused and said, so what should I do? She thought, oh my God, I'm the therapist. I've never felt this story more deeply than this week. I looked at the sermon schedule and thought, oh my God, I'm supposed to be the rabbi. How do you speak to this moment? I mean, everyone is feeling this week so differently. For some people, this was an incredible week of miracles, and for some people, this week was a week that plunged them into despair and anxiety. And what do you say to that? What do you say to this space where we're all processing it so differently? So I want to tell you a story today. It's one of my favorite stories of all time. I hope you'll love it just as much. It's about two rabbis. Now, these rabbis could not have been more different. Rav Baruch of Medzhybizh was a very distinguished rabbi. He believed that every prayer should be said with decorum, proper pronunciation, enunciation, that prayer services should be thoughtful, reflective, quiet, studious, and proper affairs. When he davened, he would come into the sanctuary and he would sit down with a straight back and he would pray reverently and quietly as would his students. They would do every prayer with every word until the end. The other rabbi, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berger, was charismatic and emotional. He didn't believe in doing things because you should do them one particular way. He believed in following his heart wherever it led him. He sang loudly sometimes and quietly others. He believed that you should move in a service. You should dance. If you just felt that you should get up and move and dance around the room. He believed in singing loudly the prayers that he felt and maybe skipping some other words. He was all about the emotional experience of the prayer. By the way, when he came into a sanctuary, he didn't sit in one spot. He would start over here, he would move over there, he would dance over there, he would clap, he would sing. It was a lot of motion and movement all the time. Now, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berger had one big dream, and that was that he wanted to have Shabbos and share a Shabbat with Rav Baruch of Medzhybizh. So he sent him a missive and said, hey, I'd really love to have Shabbos by you. And Rav Baruch writes back, I don't think that's a good idea. Our style, it's not going to work. Like, there's no universe in which you come to my shul, you come to my house. Like, it's not going to be pretty. No, thank you. Let's get together another time, but not for Shabbos. But Levi Yitzchak was not to be deterred. He says, please, 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 I'll do anything. Please just let me come by your Shabbos table. Baruch of Medzhybizh, again, really, really, you're so kind, you're so smart, you're so thoughtful, but I just don't think it's a good idea. Levi Yitzchak, please, I will do anything, and I mean anything. I will daven the way you daven. I will sit the way you sit. I will do nothing the way that I do it. I will do everything according to the way that you do. Just please, please let me sit with you for Shabbat. So what could Rav Baruch do? Like, he didn't want to be rude. So he says, fine, you come, you do things my way. We'll have Shabbos together. The whole week leading up to Shabbos dinner, Levi Yitzchak was beyond nervous. He could not figure out how he was going to pretzel himself into Rav Baruch style, but he was determined to. So he was talking it through with people, and he said, I know that if I say anything out loud, I'll be tempted to sing in the way that I do, so I'm just going to hold my lips together. And I know that if my limbs are free, I'll be tempted to move around the room the way that I do, so I'm going to sit on my hands. And that way I'll get through the service. So he goes, And they start the service, and everyone with their decorum, L'cha dodi, and Levi Yitzchak, and he's holding himself together. And the service goes on, and the service goes on. And as the service goes on, it gets harder and harder for him to hold himself back. And everyone can see he's struggling. He's sitting like, but he's doing it, he's following protocol. He gets through the service. Beautiful. They make it to dinner. Now, at this time, you have to know two things. One, you have to know that the great rabbis of the time used to wear their talitot to eat. It was considered a really beautiful practice of bringing the meal into holiness. And they also had a practice of gefilte fish. Very important. They served sweet gefilte fish and sour gefilte fish. And it was a big deal. You had to pick whether you wanted sweet gefilte fish first or sour gefilte fish first. And there's some wisdom to this, right? Like some people would say, I want to have the sour first so that I can end on the sweet. And some people would say, like, I want to have the sweet first to be able to prepare me to engage with the sour. So Rav Baruch, full of decorum, full of properness, has people going around saying, would you care for sweet or sour first? Would you care for sweet or sour first? Would you care for sweet or sour first? He goes all the way around the table. And he finally gets to Rav Levi Yitzchak of Berger, and he says, would you care for sweet or sour first? And Levi Yitzchak goes, I don't care about fish. Boom! All I care about is God! And the fish goes flying, and there's gefilte fish flying this way, and gefilte fish flying this way, and gefilte fish flying this way, and it's flying all over. And by the way, it smells. And there's fish flying, and one giant piece of gefilte fish lands smack dab on Rav Baruch's forehead. And the entire room goes, and the fish slides down his face and lands on his tallis. And it's dripping. And the Talmidim are just like, and Rav Baruch, ever a proper man, takes a napkin. Again, the room is just like, puts his napkin down. He looks up. He looks down. He looks up. You're right. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I didn't see that. Thank you for coming to Shabbat with me this week. I'm going to treasure this tallis forever because this tallis has been marked by someone who truly loves God. And that's something we should all do. Rav Baruch was true to his word. He wore that stinky stained tallis every Shabbos for the rest of his life. And he not only wore it every Shabbos for the rest of his life, but he passed it down generation to generation to generation. And that stained tallis became so holy that they would only wear it on Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur, the holiest service of the holiest day of the year. Why am I telling you this story? I mean, first of all, I love it. Who doesn't love a story about flying gefilte fish? But I also just feel like this is such an important story for our time. It's a story about how important it is for each one of us to be fully and authentically ourselves. But it's also such a fascinating story because fundamentally, both Rav Baruch and Rab Levi Yitzchak were totally right. Let's take Levi Yitzchak first. I mean, he's totally right that it's important to come together, that it's important to find ways to be together. We're good with that. But then Rav Baruch is also totally right. His style and Levi Yitzchak's styles are totally incompatible. And so the challenge of the story is, how do we find our way through in a way that we all, with our different and individual styles, can operate in the same space? There's been a lot of talk on social media this week about how all of us should be processing the election. You should be happy. You should be grateful. You should know how anxious I am. You should know how upset I am. Levi Yitzchak and Rav Baruch of Medzhybizh teach us that we don't have to feel any particular way. We don't have to, and we should not change our practice. Right? The end of the story wasn't that Rav Baruch says, oh, Levi Yitzchak, from now on I'm going to do it your way. No. What they say is we are together going to find a way to be in community in a way that matters. So here's our challenge. We are that therapist. We are that rabbi. We are the people who have been selected, who have been chosen to live into this moment. Our challenge is to be fully, authentically, completely ourselves. Our challenge is to fully live our values. Our challenge is to fight for what we believe in, and our challenge is to find a way to come together, to make sure that we can join together for what matters, and to keep our focus on our highest priority, which is serving God, serving the Jewish people, and serving for the blessing of the world. We rise, page 184.